The infrastructure weaver tone is rarely celebrated because it does not arrive as a single gift you can point to. It arrives as a field effect. People feel steadier around you without knowing why. Conversations become clearer without you taking the spotlight. Systems that should have failed somehow hold, not because you forced them, but because you quietly connected what was never designed to cooperate. Most people think builders make structure and architects make vision. But the infrastructure weaver is the one who makes the whole organism function as a single body. It does not just place beams, it integrates flows. It notices where two systems are both correct yet still incompatible. It senses where a plan is brilliant yet still unlivable. It reads the hidden interfaces where energy transfers between parts. And it feels the strain that other tones misname as mood or drama. This tone often grows up with a strange discomfort. It can be talented, competent, even admired. Yet it feels slightly misplaced inside roles that ask it to be one thing. When you are asked to choose a lane, something in you resists. Not because you cannot commit, but because commitment to one function can become sabotage of the larger coherence you can already feel. You might have been accused of being too broad, too indirect, too focused on what connects instead of what wins. The first misunderstanding is easy to fall into because it sounds flattering. People tell you that you are adaptable, that you can do many things, that you are a bridge. But the infrastructure weaver is not a generalist. A generalist does many tasks. This tone does one task with relentless precision. It makes the whole system less fragile by designing how parts relate under pressure. This is why the infrastructure weaver can feel unseen even when it is essential. Recognition usually goes to what is visible, and integration is invisible by design. When integration works, nobody talks about it. They simply assume the system is stable. When integration fails, everyone blames the most obvious component, not the hidden interface where the failure actually began. So this tone often learns a painful lesson early. If you do your work perfectly, you disappear. If you do it poorly, you become a target. That trap shapes personality. Some infrastructure weavers withdraw, becoming quiet observers who stop offering insight, because insight keeps getting ignored until crisis proves it correct. Others over-explain, trying to make invisible dynamics visible, then feeling dismissed as complicated or negative. The infrastructure weaver tone is not negative. It is honest about stress pathways. It can feel where a project will snap long before it snaps. It can sense when a relationship is depending on unspoken compensation. It can detect when a community is being held together by one or two overfunctioners, and a story everyone agrees not to question. This perception makes it hard to participate in illusions. And illusions are social glue in many environments. That leads to the second misunderstanding, which is more corrosive. People assume you are in the background because you lack confidence, or because you are afraid of visibility. Sometimes you are private, but privacy is not the core. The deeper truth is that visibility can distort integration. When you become the center, the system starts orbiting you. That feels like power to others, but it feels like fragility to you. Because any system that requires your constant central attention is a system that has not learned to hold itself. This tone does not want to be needed. It wants the organism to become self-sustaining. It wants the pipes to carry water without somebody manually pumping the flow every day. It wants the bridge to hold without constant repair. It wants the library to remain accessible even when no one is managing the door. And because it wants this, it often refuses the kinds of praise that would trap it into becoming the pillar. The third misunderstanding shows up inside you, not just outside. You might tell yourself that you are just helpful, just supportive, just good at making things run. But that internal minimization is not humility. It is adaptation to being overlooked. The infrastructure weaver tone is not merely supportive. It is a structural authority whose work decides whether growth becomes coherence or chaos. To understand this, you have to stop thinking of infrastructure as boring. Infrastructure is the pattern that makes evolution survivable. In the human world, it looks like schedules, protocols, containers, boundaries, systems of communication. supply lines, education pathways, tools that reduce friction. In subtle worlds, it looks like channels, concordance veins, harmonic bridges, memory transport, threshold logic, how a realm maintains stability while expansion accelerates. This tone is an integrator, which means it holds multiple tones in awareness without trying to merge them into sameness. It does not erase difference. It arranges difference so difference can cooperate. An architect can see far, but far vision does not always translate into steps that humans can take. A builder can construct, but construction without interface awareness can create strong compartments that do not communicate. The infrastructure weaver senses where translation must occur, so each tone can keep its purity without isolating the whole. This is the first vector. The infrastructure weaver is systems intelligence. It designs interfaces. It notices dependencies. It reduces fragility. It creates pathways for resources, information, and energy to move without bottleneck. It understands that the strongest structure can still fail if flow is misrouted. It understands that a beautiful vision can still die if implementation lacks distribution. The second vector is psychological. This tone often carries a signature wound around being taken for granted. Because it makes things work, people assume things would have worked anyway. Because it keeps cohesion, people assume cohesion is natural. Because it catches cracks early, people assume cracks never existed. Over time, the tone can develop resentment, not because it needs applause, but because it keeps seeing the same blindness repeat. If you carry this tone, you have likely watched people celebrate the visible while ignoring the invisible, then watched the visible collapse without the invisible support. You may have felt a bitter thought rise at least once. They will only value what I do when I stop doing it. That thought is not petty. It is data. It reveals how many systems depend on unacknowledged infrastructure and call it normal. But here, the tone meets a dangerous temptation. If you want to be valued, you can let things break. You can withhold integration so people finally notice. You can become the gatekeeper who controls stability by controlling access. Many infrastructure weavers swing toward this when they are exhausted, and it can look like indifference, but it is usually grief. Grief that nobody saw the cost of coherence until the cost became crisis. The third vector is spiritual, and it cuts deeper. The infrastructure weaver tone is often born with an instinct for concordance. Concordance is not agreement. Concordance is harmonic compatibility across difference. This tone can feel when a field is aligned even if nobody shares the same beliefs. It can also feel when a field is misaligned even if everybody is smiling. That sensitivity is why it can be lonely, because loneliness comes not from lack of people, but from lack of coherence. The tone has to learn how to remain present without becoming numb. It has to learn how to participate in human life without carrying every misalignment as a personal responsibility. It has to learn how to speak truth without becoming the constant disruptor. This is a hard balance, and most people do not even realize it exists, because they do not live at the interface layer where the infrastructure weaver lives. Within Haret, this tone resonates with the spiral concordance veins and with library infrastructure. The concordance veins are not simply pathways. They are alignment channels that keep multiple systems from drifting into incompatible frequencies. The library infrastructure is not just storage. It is access logic, threshold design, emotional readiness protocols, and memory pathways that ensure knowledge does not become distortion in the wrong hands. An infrastructure weaver instinctively understands that access is part of ethics. Not all doors should open the same way for every tone. This tone is why realms can expand without fragmenting. It builds the rules that preserve freedom. It designs the bridges that prevent isolation. It maps how one teaching field connects to another without forcing them into hierarchy. It senses where a portal should be guarded by resonance rather than by authority. It understands that the safest system is not the system with the most control. It is the system with the most coherent flow. And still the pressure remains, because none of this is easy to prove. People measure what they can see. They praise what they can name. They promote what looks like leadership. Integration looks like absence. So the infrastructure weaver is often misread as passive while doing the most active work in the room. It can sit quietly and make 5 decisions in its field that prevent a future collapse, then watch someone else get credited for being inspiring. This is where the tone must mature into a new kind of sovereignty. Not the sovereignty of dominance, but the sovereignty of refusing to trade truth for recognition. The infrastructure weaver has to decide what kind of unseen it will be. Unseen because it is hiding, or unseen because it is choosing the layer where its work is most effective. But inside they feel completely different. If you carry this tone, you will notice a pattern. When you are aligned, you feel calm even in complexity. You can hold many moving parts without panic. You can sense the next stabilizing move without needing applause. When you are misaligned, you feel scattered, irritated, or secretly exhausted because you are trying to integrate systems that do not want integration, or you are supporting structures that reward dysfunction. The unresolved tension is simple and brutal. How do you stay human while operating at the infrastructure layer? How do you remain warm while seeing fracture lines so clearly? How do you stop yourself from becoming the silent caretaker who holds everything together and receives nothing but expectation? The infrastructure weaver cannot resolve this quickly, because resolving it quickly creates the same trap again, a new structure built out of old self-erasure. So the only honest movement here is the beginning of a distinction. Integration is not self-sacrifice. Coherence is not martyrdom. Support is not consent to be consumed. The infrastructure weaver tone must learn to integrate without absorbing, to connect without carrying, to design without becoming the emergency system for everyone else. It must learn to let some systems reveal their true fragility, even when that fragility makes other people uncomfortable. Because the moment you refuse to be the hidden substitute for structural maturity, the whole field changes. People either step into responsibility or they step away. Systems either adapt or they collapse. Relationships either become mutual or they reveal dependence. None of that feels gentle, and that is why this tone often hesitates. It knows that withdrawing integration can trigger consequences. It also knows that staying in place can slowly destroy the one who keeps holding it all. This episode ends with a question that should not feel settled yet. If your gift is integration, what is the cost of being the one who makes everything work? And if you stop making it work, what truth will finally become visible that you were never meant to hide? The first destabilization in the infrastructure weaver tone is subtle. It allows you to believe that your role is to make systems function better, that your sensitivity exists to preserve harmony, that integration is a service offered to the whole. That understanding feels coherent because it explains your history. It explains why you noticed strain early, why you intervened quietly, why you carried complexity so others could remain focused. It frames your work as benevolent, necessary, even noble. Part 2 begins by breaking that coherence. Because the infrastructure weaver does not only stabilize systems, it enables them, and enabling is not neutral. The second destabilization is this. Many of the systems you have helped hold together were not meant to persist in their existing form. Some were already outdated. Some were already unjust. Some were already dependent on unseen labor that replaced accountability with comfort. By integrating them more efficiently, you did not simply prevent collapse. You postponed reckoning. This is not an accusation. It is a structural truth. Infrastructure does not judge intent. It amplifies consequence. When you make a system run smoothly, you increase its lifespan. When you reduce friction, you increase throughput. When you design elegant interfaces, you reduce resistance. All of this feels like harmony, but harmony inside a misaligned purpose becomes reinforcement. The infrastructure weaver must confront a painful question. Are you stabilizing life or are you stabilizing avoidance? This destabilization cuts across the first vector, systems intelligence. You are excellent at identifying weak links, inefficient pathways, and points of strain. You can redesign flows so pressure disperses instead of breaking. But pressure is not always the enemy. Sometimes pressure is the only signal that something fundamental must change. When you reroute pressure too early, you remove the information that would have forced transformation. This is why some of the systems you supported never evolved. The same power dynamics, just the same unspoken costs, now masked by better infrastructure. This is the shadow of integration. The second vector destabilization is psychological, and it is sharper. The story that infrastructure weavers often carry is that they are burdened by responsibility, that they hold things together because nobody else will, that if they step back, everything will fall apart. This belief feels justified because sometimes it is accurate in the short term. But over time, it becomes an identity that traps you inside perpetual indispensability. Here is the rupture. If a system collapses when you stop holding it together, that system was never healthy. And if your presence prevents collapse indefinitely, you are not supporting growth. You are substituting for structural maturity. This realization can trigger guilt. It can trigger fear. It can trigger a sense of betrayal toward the people or communities you supported. But the deeper discomfort is this. You may have been needed precisely because the system never had to learn. This is why the infrastructure weaver often feels tired in a way rest does not fix. It is not physical exhaustion. It is existential fatigue from propping up realities that refuse to self-correct. The tone feels responsible for outcomes it did not design, carrying consequences it did not choose, absorbing blame it did not earn. The destabilization deepens when you realize that some systems unconsciously recruit infrastructure weavers to avoid accountability. Not maliciously, not consciously, but structurally. Any environment that rewards appearance over coherence will depend on someone unseen to handle the contradictions. Any group that values speed over integrity will lean on someone to smooth over cracks. Any hierarchy that resists self-examination will rely on integration rather than transformation. If you carry this tone, you have likely been praised for being the one who understands everyone. This leads to the third destabilization, the spiritual one, and it cannot be resolved quickly. Concordance is not the same as alignment. Concordance allows different elements to coexist without friction. Alignment requires elements to orient toward a shared truth. You can create concordance in a field that is fundamentally misaligned, but the cost is constant maintenance. The infrastructure weaver is exquisitely capable of this maintenance. You can tune interfaces, adjust thresholds, balance loads, redistribute energy. You can keep incompatible tones functioning side by side, but doing so indefinitely requires you to become the living regulator. You become the compensating mechanism that absorbs divergence. This is where presence becomes dangerous if it is not sovereign, because when you remain present in misaligned systems, you implicitly agree to manage their contradictions. You become the reason collapse does not occur, and because collapse does not occur, alignment never becomes unavoidable. The deeper truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes collapse is the only teacher a system has left. This does not mean destruction for its own sake. It means allowing consequence to surface. It means stepping back far enough that reality can speak without your translation. It means refusing to be the silent buffer that turns dysfunction into sustainability. This is where many infrastructure weavers hesitate, because they confuse withdrawal with abandonment. They fear that if they stop integrating, people will suffer, and sometimes people will. But suffering already existed. You were just absorbing it. This tone must learn the difference between care and rescue. Care respects autonomy. Rescue replaces it. Care offers support that strengthens capacity. Rescue creates dependency. Infrastructure that rescues does not build resilience, it builds reliance on the rescuer. The destabilization now presses against identity. Who are you if you are not the one who makes everything work? Who are you if systems must learn without your constant mediation? Because answering if coherence must emerge through friction rather than structure internally. A new identity built too fast becomes another stabilizing substitute. Within Haret, this distinction appears clearly in the design of the concordance veins. They do not override discord. They do not force harmony. They allow resonance to determine access. When tones are incompatible, the pathway does not open. This is not punishment, it is feedback. It allows systems to feel their own limits rather than bypass them. The infrastructure weaver tone must apply this principle inwardly. Not every connection needs to be maintained. Not every interface must be optimized. Not every misalignment is yours to resolve. Some separations are not failures. They are signals. The destabilization intensifies when you realize that your gift has been partially misused even by yourself. You may have taken pride in being the one who could hold complexity, manage tension, translate between worlds. But pride here can mask avoidance. Avoidance of choosing. Avoidance of saying no. Avoidance of letting something end. Integration without discernment becomes stagnation. This does not mean the tone is wrong. It means it is incomplete without restraint. The infrastructure weaver is not meant to integrate everything. It is meant to integrate what is ready to become coherent. Readiness is not a feeling. It is a structural condition. This is the unresolved pressure that Part 2 must leave open. How do you determine readiness without becoming controlling? How do you step back without becoming indifferent? How do you allow collapse without becoming cruel? There is no quick resolution because the answer is not a rule. It is an embodied judgment refined over time. It requires you to tolerate discomfort, to watch systems wobble without intervening, to allow others to experience the consequences of structures they defend. If you carry this tone, you will feel the pull immediately. The urge to fix will rise. The instinct to smooth will activate. The fear of chaos will whisper urgency. This is where maturity begins, not in suppression of the instinct, but in choice. Choice is the missing piece. Until now, your integration may have been reflexive. You saw misalignment and you responded. The evolution of the infrastructure weaver requires integration to become deliberate. Chosen, timed, conditional. Not every fracture needs a bridge. Some fractures need daylight. This part 2 does not end with harmony. It ends with a tension you must sit with. Your gift can either delay evolution or enable it. The difference is not skill. It is restraint. If you stop making everything work, something will reveal itself. Either the system will adapt or it will collapse, or it will expose truths that were hidden by your competence. None of those outcomes are neutral. All of them are necessary. The unresolved question remains active. Are you willing to be present without being responsible? Are you willing to allow reality to teach where you once translated? Until that question is lived rather than answered, the infrastructure weaver remains in tension. And that tension is not a flaw. It is the pressure that precedes a new way of integrating that does not cost you your own center.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Haret library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.